Banished by her own kind, she found hope in the last place she expected, Earth. The judgment of Zirath. The crystalline halls of the Vorthak High Council echoed with the sound of ceremonial drums as Commander Zara Velthon stood before the tribunal. Her silver skin gleamed under the harsh blue lights, and her elongated fingers trembled slightly as the energy restraints hummed around her wrists. The assembled council members, each bearing the ceremonial scars of their rank, watched her with expressions of disgust and disappointment. "You have brought shame upon the Vorthak Empire," declared High Arbiter Kellen, his voice resonating through the chamber like thunder. His ancient face bore the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds, and his 6 eyes fixed upon Zara with unmistakable contempt. "During the siege of Kepler Station, you deliberately sabotaged our assault ships to prevent civilian casualties." Zara lifted her chin defiantly, her violet eyes blazing with conviction. "Those were innocent families, children who had nothing to do with the conflict. The military targets were already neutralized." A collective gasp arose from the gallery where her fellow officers sat in judgment. Among them, she spotted Captain Drix Montar, her former mentor, shaking his head in what appeared to be profound disappointment. The sight cut deeper than any physical wound could have. "Innocence is a luxury we cannot afford," High Arbiter Kellen continued, his voice growing colder. "The Vorthak Empire has ruled for 10,000 years because we understand that mercy is weakness. Your actions cost us valuable resources and allowed enemy forces to regroup." Sub-Commander Vex Korath, Zara's own second-in-command, stepped forward from the ranks. His betrayal stung like acid in her veins. "High Arbiter, I served under Commander Velthon for 3 years. Her hesitation in combat situations has been a persistent problem. She consistently prioritizes enemy welfare over mission objectives." The formal charges were read with mechanical precision: treason against the Empire, insubordination during active combat, endangering Vorthak personnel through unauthorized mercy protocols. Each accusation felt like a hammer blow against her chest, not because they were false, but because they were entirely accurate. "Commander Zara Velthon," High Arbiter Kellen pronounced, rising from his obsidian throne, "you are hereby stripped of all rank, honors, and citizenship. Your name shall be erased from all military records. You are sentenced to permanent exile on the primitive world designated Terra 3, known locally as Earth." The chamber erupted in murmurs of shock. Earth was considered little more than a backwater, planet inhabited by a species that had barely achieved interstellar awareness. It was the ultimate insult, banishment to a world populated by beings the Vorthak considered barely above animals. "You will be transported immediately," the High Arbiter continued. "No rescue will come. No communication will be permitted. You will live among the primitives until your natural death, which we expect will be swift given their violent tendencies." As the guards moved to escort her away, Zara caught sight of her younger brother, tech specialist Joran Velthon, in the observation deck. Tears streamed down his silver cheeks, but he made no move to speak in her defense. She understood. In the Vorthak Empire, association with a traitor meant sharing their fate. The transport ship was cramped and automated, designed for one-way journeys to forgotten corners of the galaxy. As they departed Vorthak Prime, Zara watched her homeworld shrink to a distant star through the small viewport. The ship's computer provided basic information about her destination: a small blue-green planet in an unremarkable solar system, populated by bipedal mammals who called themselves humans. During the long journey through hyperspace, Zara had time to reflect on her choices. She could have followed orders, could have let the civilians die, could have maintained her position and honor within the Empire. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of those she had saved. Children who would grow up because of her decision. Families who would remain whole. The ship's proximity alarms activated, jarring her from her thoughts. Through the viewport, Earth appeared as a brilliant blue marble suspended in the void. Its surface swirled with white clouds and dotted with brown and green continents. It looked surprisingly beautiful for a prison world. As the automated landing sequence engaged, Zara steeled herself for whatever awaited her among the humans. She had no weapons, no technology beyond basic survival gear, and no hope of rescue. All she had was her determination to survive and perhaps, if she was fortunate, find some small measure of redemption among the stars. Part 2. First Contact with Humanity. The crash landing was violent and unforgiving. Zara's transport vessel carved a burning trail across a vast forest before finally coming to rest in a clearing surrounded by towering evergreen trees. Emergency systems hissed as they released pressurized atmosphere, and warning lights bathed everything in an ominous red glow. Her body ached from the impact, but her Vorthak physiology had protected her from serious injury. Emerging from the wreckage, she found herself in what appeared to be a temperate wilderness. The air was rich with oxygen and carried scents she had never experienced before. Pine needles crunched beneath her feet, and somewhere in the distance she could hear the sound of running water. For a prison world, Earth was remarkably beautiful. Her contemplation was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles. 3 large machines, which she later learned were called trucks, rumbled into the clearing. Armed humans emerged, their weapons primitive but numerous. They wore matching uniforms and moved with military precision that reminded her uncomfortably of her own forces. "Stay back," she called out in Vorthak, then attempted a basic translation protocol her suit provided. "No harm intended." The humans exchanged glances, clearly shocked by her appearance. Their leader, a tall woman with short brown hair and intelligent green eyes, stepped forward cautiously. She spoke in their native language, and Zara's translation device worked to decode the meaning. "My name is Colonel Rebecca Martinez," the woman said, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. "Are you injured? Are there others?" The question surprised Zara. She had expected immediate hostility, perhaps attempts to capture or kill her. Instead, this human was asking about her welfare. "I am alone," she managed to say through the translator. "Exiled. No threat." Colonel Martinez studied her for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. "Lower your weapons," she ordered her soldiers. "She's injured and alone. We follow first aid protocols." The medical team that arrived 2 hours later was unlike anything Zara had encountered in her military career. Dr. James Harrison, a gentleman with graying hair and kind eyes, approached her with open hands and a warm smile. He made no attempt to restrain her, instead focusing entirely on treating her injuries with remarkable skill and compassion. "Your bone structure is fascinating," he murmured as he worked, seemingly talking to himself as much as to her. "Denser than human bones probably explains how you survived that crash. The silver pigmentation in your skin appears to be metallic, possibly providing some form of radiation protection." Zara found herself relaxing despite every instinct screaming that she should remain on guard. These humans treated her not as an enemy or specimen, but as a patient requiring care. It was a concept so foreign to Vorthak culture that she struggled to process it. Over the following days, as she recovered in a military medical facility, Zara began to understand something remarkable about these supposed primitives. They had established elaborate protocols for treating prisoners of war, complete with rules about dignity, medical care, and basic rights. When she asked Colonel Martinez about this, the human woman looked genuinely confused by the question. "It's called the Geneva Convention," Martinez explained during one of their daily conversations. "We learned a long time ago that how we treat our enemies reflects who we are as a people. Besides, you're not really an enemy, are you? You're a refugee." The word struck Zara like lightning. Refugee. Not prisoner, not specimen, not threat. Someone seeking safety and shelter. The concept was so simple, yet it revealed a depth of civilization that her own supposedly advanced empire lacked entirely. Dr. Harrison introduced her to human literature, starting with basic children's books to help her understand their language and culture. She was amazed to discover stories that celebrated compassion, sacrifice for others, and the protection of the innocent. These were the same values that had led to her exile, yet among humans, they were considered virtues rather than Weaknesses. Your people must be proud of such stories, she commented one day while reading about a human hero who saved others at great personal cost. Dr. Harrison smiled sadly. We try to live up to those ideals, though we don't always succeed. But we keep trying. That's what makes us human, I think. The constant effort to be better than we were yesterday. As weeks passed, Zara began to see Earth not as a prison, but as a revelation. These humans, with their shorter lifespans and supposedly primitive technology, had achieved something her empire never could. They had learned to value life for its own sake. They protected their weak, cared for their sick, and celebrated those who showed mercy rather than condemning them. The irony was not lost on her. The Vorthak Empire had banished her to Earth as punishment, expecting her to suffer among violent primitives. Instead, she had found a civilization that embodied everything she had been punished for believing in, learning human courage. 6 months into her stay on Earth, Zara had been relocated to a research facility in Colorado, where she worked alongside human scientists studying interstellar communication. Her advanced knowledge of galactic technology made her invaluable, but more importantly, she had begun to understand the extraordinary nature of human courage through direct observation. Dr. Michael Torres, the facility's lead physicist, had become her closest human friend. Unlike her Vorthak colleagues who had viewed relationships as strategic alliances, Michael seemed to genuinely care about her well-being, without expecting anything in return. This morning, he burst into her laboratory with unprecedented excitement. "Zara, you need to see this," he said, pulling up a holographic display of space telescope data. "We've detected massive energy signatures heading toward our solar system. Ships, dozens of them, and the technology signatures match what you've told us about Vorthak vessels." Zara's blood turned cold as she analyzed the data. The fleet approaching. Earth was enormous, far larger than any single-world invasion force. This was an extermination fleet, the kind deployed when the Empire wanted to erase a world completely from existence. "They're not coming for conquest," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're coming to sterilize the planet. My presence here has contaminated you in their eyes. They'll kill every human to prevent your inferior values from spreading." Dr. Torres placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we need to prepare. How long do we have?" 2 weeks, maybe 3 at their current speed." Zara turned to face him, expecting to see fear or anger or accusation. Instead, she saw determination. "Michael, you don't understand. This fleet carries enough firepower to crack continental plates. Earth cannot fight them." "Maybe not," Dr. Torres replied calmly. "But we can try. That's what humans do." Within hours, the facility had transformed into a war room. Colonel Martinez arrived with military advisors, while scientists from around the world connected via secure channels. What followed was unlike any military planning session Zara had ever witnessed in the Vorthak Empire. Instead of arguing about territorial gains or strategic advantages, the humans focused entirely on protecting civilian populations. Evacuation plans were drawn for major cities. Underground shelters were prepared for those who couldn't be moved. Medical supplies were distributed to remote areas. "Sir," a young lieutenant addressed Colonel Martinez, "the enemy fleet is massive. Conventional weapons won't be effective against their shielding. Shouldn't we consider surrender terms?" "Surrender isn't an option," Martinez replied firmly. "If Zara is right, they're not interested in occupation. They want extermination. We fight." Dr. Torres had been working with Zara to develop defensive strategies based on her knowledge of Vorthak technology. Their solution was desperate and dangerous, overloading Earth's early warning satellite network to create a massive electromagnetic pulse that might disrupt the alien ship's systems. "The problem is range," Zara explained to the assembled team. "We'd need to get close to their fleet within a few thousand kilometers. At that distance, any ship carrying the pulse generator would be destroyed instantly." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then Captain Lisa Chen, a young astronaut with barely 5 years of space experience, stepped forward. "I'll do it." "Lisa, no," Dr. Torres protested. "It's a suicide mission." "So is doing nothing," Captain Chen replied. If their fleet reaches Earth, billions die. If I can stop them, only one dies. That's basic mathematics. Similar scenes played. Out across the globe as the news spread. Pilots volunteered for impossible missions. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit spacecraft never designed for combat. Civilians organized evacuation efforts with remarkable efficiency and minimal panic. Zara watched it all with growing amazement. In the Vorthak Empire, such sacrifice would be commanded from above, enforced through threat of punishment. Here, humans volunteered. They chose to risk everything for people they had never met, for future generations they would never see. Why? She asked Dr. Torres one evening as they watched the night sky, knowing that death approached from among those very stars. Why do your people fight when the odds are impossible? Michael considered the question carefully. Because somebody has to, he finally answered. Because the alternative is living on our knees or watching others suffer when we might have helped. Because we'd rather die trying to do the right thing than live knowing we chose cowardice. The simplicity of his answer contained profound wisdom. Humans didn't fight because they expected to win. They fought because fighting was right. Because surrender meant the destruction of everything they valued. It was courage not born of military doctrine or strategic calculation, but from something deeper and more powerful. As launch day approached, Zara made a decision that would have been impossible in her former life. She requested permission to join Captain Chen's mission. Not as a commander or strategist, but as a volunteer willing to die alongside the humans who had shown her what true civilization looked like. You don't have to do this, Colonel Martinez told her during their final briefing. This isn't your fight. Zara smiled, an expression she had learned from her human friends. Yes, it is. Earth is my home now. These people are my family. Where else would I be? The battle for Earth's soul. The makeshift fleet that launched from Earth consisted of 12 modified spacecraft, ranging from military shuttles to converted research vessels. Captain Lisa Chen commanded the lead ship, while Zara served as tactical advisor aboard the secondary vessel piloted by Commander Ryan Walsh, a veteran of Earth's first Mars missions. As they approached the Vorthak fleet, the true scale of the enemy force became apparent. Hundreds of sleek, angular ships hung in space, like metallic sharks, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive blue energy that powered Vorthak technology. The flagship alone was larger than most human cities. Contact incoming, reported Communications Officer Janet Kim. They're hailing us. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of High Admiral Corvex Thane, one of the Empire's most ruthless commanders. His 6 eyes focused on Zara with unmistakable contempt. The exile still lives, Admiral Thane said in heavily accented English, his translator struggling with human phonetics. How fitting that you will witness the cleansing of this contaminated world before your execution. These people have done nothing to threaten the Empire, Zara replied, stepping into view of the communication array. They are peaceful, barely capable of interstellar travel. There is no honor in destroying them. Admiral Thane's laugh was like breaking glass. Honor? You still speak of honor after your betrayal? These primitives have infected you completely. Their weakness spreads like a disease, and diseases must be eradicated. The transmission ended abruptly, followed immediately by weapons fire. The Vorthak fleet opened with a devastating barrage that would have obliterated any conventional defense force. But the humans had prepared for this moment. Instead of engaging directly, the Earth vessels scattered in seemingly random directions, using tactics that appeared chaotic to Vorthak's strategic thinking. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communication channel. Pattern Delta 7. Remember, we're not trying to win a war. We're buying time for one shot. The next 20 minutes were a masterpiece of desperate courage. Human pilots, flying. Ships never meant for combat, somehow managed to evade the overwhelming firepower of the Vorthak fleet. They used the asteroid field of the outer solar system for cover, popped in and out of engagement range, and employed suicide runs as distractions. Commander Walsh proved to be a pilot of extraordinary skill, threading their vessel through gaps in the enemy formation that seemed impossible to navigate. How are you doing this? Zara asked as another volley of energy blasts missed them by mere meters. Video games, Walsh grinned grimly. Spent my teenage years flying impossible missions and computer simulations. Never thought it would save humanity. The human fleet was being decimated. Of the 12 ships that had launched, only 4 remained operational. But their sacrifice had served its purpose. Captain Chen's vessel, carrying the electromagnetic pulse generator, had maneuvered into position near the Vorthak flagship. "This is Chen to all vessels," came the captain's voice over the radio. "Beginning final approach. It's been an honor serving with you all." Zara watched through the tactical display as Chen's ship accelerated directly toward the massive Vorthak vessel. Energy beams lanced out from dozens of enemy ships. But the small human craft was too close now, moving too fast for their targeting systems to track effectively. The electromagnetic pulse detonated in a sphere of brilliant white light that temporarily blinded every sensor in the system. When the radiance faded, the Vorthak fleet hung motionless in space, their ships dark and powerless. But Admiral Thane had not achieved his position through incompetence. Emergency power systems began coming online across the fleet, and the massive ship slowly began to regain mobility. The pulse had worked, but only temporarily. "All remaining vessels, withdraw to minimum safe distance," Commander Walsh ordered. "We've done all we can." "No," Zara said quietly, studying the tactical display. "There's one more thing we can try." She activated the ship's communication array, broadcasting on all Vorthak military frequencies. "This is Commander Zara Velthon to all Vorthak vessels," she announced. "I invoke the right of challenge against High Admiral Corvex Thane. Single combat to determine the fate of this world." The ancient tradition was so old that most modern Vorthak had forgotten it existed. But military law was absolute, and even Admiral Thane could not refuse without losing face before his entire fleet. "You seek to die with slightly more dignity?" Admiral Thane's voice crackled through the communication system. "Very well. Single combat aboard my flagship. When you fall, this world burns." As Zara prepared to transport to the enemy vessel, Commander Walsh gripped her shoulder. "You know this is suicide." He's a trained warrior with 40 years of combat experience. Zara smiled, an expression that no longer seemed foreign on her silver features. "Perhaps, but I've learned something from humanity that he never will. Sometimes the most important victories come from choosing to stand up, regardless of whether you expect to win." The transport beam activated, pulling her toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of both worlds and the future of compassion, in a galaxy too long ruled by strength alone. The choice that changed everything. The combat arena aboard Admiral Thane's flagship was a circular chamber lined with energy barriers, designed for ceremonial duels that rarely occurred in the modern Vorthak military. As Zara materialized in the center of the space, she could see hundreds of Vorthak officers watching from observation decks above, their expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Admiral Thane entered from the opposite side, his movements fluid and confident. He carried traditional Vorthak combat weapons, twin energy blades that hummed with lethal power. His scarred body bore testament to decades of victory and battles across the galaxy. "Before we begin," Admiral Thane announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "let the exile explain to her new primitive friends why she chose this path of disgrace." Zara stood quietly for a moment, then activated her own communication device. Her words were broadcast not only to the assembled Vorthak fleet, but back to Earth, where millions of humans watched and waited. 6 months ago, I believed strength meant the ability to destroy your enemies," she began. "I believed civilization was measured by the number of worlds you could conquer, the number of species you could dominate. I was wrong." Admiral Thane laughed coldly. "The human infection speaks through you. Observe, Fleet Command, how quickly their weakness spreads." "What I found on Earth wasn't weakness," Zara continued, ignoring his interruption. "I found a different kind of strength. The strength to protect rather than destroy. The strength to lift others up rather than tear them down. The strength to choose compassion even when it costs everything." She drew her own energy weapon, a standard Vorthak blade she had taken from her crashed ship. "These humans, whom we call primitives, have achieved something our empire never could. They have learned to value life itself, not just the lives of their own species, but all life. The duel began with explosive violence. Admiral Thane was everything his reputation suggested: fast, skilled, and absolutely ruthless. His twin blades wove patterns of death that forced Zara into desperate defensive maneuvers. Within moments, she was bleeding from several minor wounds. But, as the fight progressed, something unexpected happened. Zara began to adapt, not to match his aggression, but to redirect it. She had learned this technique not from military training, but from watching human martial artists who emphasized harmony over domination. "Stand and fight properly," Admiral Thane snarled, as another of his attacks was deflected rather than blocked. "Your human cowardice dishonors even this farce of combat." "This isn't cowardice," Zara replied, breathing heavily but still standing. "This is evolution." The turning point came when Admiral Thane, frustrated by her defensive tactics, made a reckless overhead strike intended to end the fight decisively. Zara sidestepped and used his own momentum to send him crashing into the arena wall. For a moment he lay stunned, and tradition would have demanded that she strike the killing blow. Instead, she stepped back and lowered her weapon. "Finish it," Admiral Thane gasped, struggling to rise. "Complete your victory." "No," Zara said simply. "I choose mercy." The arena fell completely silent. In 10,000 years of Vorthak military tradition, no combatant had ever deliberately spared a defeated opponent in formal combat. The concept was so alien that many observers seemed unable to process what they had witnessed. Admiral Thane stared at her in complete bewilderment. "You have won. By law, the fleet must obey your commands. Yet you spare me? Why?" "Because killing you serves no purpose beyond satisfying anger," Zara replied. "Because showing mercy is sometimes the strongest choice you can make. Because these humans have taught me that how we treat our enemies defines who we are." She turned to address the assembled Vorthak officers directly. "Look at what we have become. We spread across the galaxy like a plague, destroying everything that doesn't submit to our will. We call it strength, but it's really fear. Fear that something different might challenge our beliefs." In the observation galleries, she could see officers exchanging uncertain glances. Some appeared confused, others thoughtful, and still others angry. These humans face extinction today, yet they chose to fight rather than surrender. They sent volunteers on suicide missions to protect their families. They showed courage that had nothing to do with conquest or domination. They fought not to destroy, but to preserve. Admiral Thane had struggled to his feet, leaning heavily against the arena wall. "What are you proposing, exile?" "I propose we learn from them instead of destroying them," Zara said. "I propose we discover what makes a civilization truly strong. Not the ability to kill, but the ability to choose life." The communication system crackled as reports came in from across the fleet. The electromagnetic pulse had caused more damage than initially apparent. Several ships were reporting critical system failures, and others were experiencing power fluctuations that would take days to repair. But more significantly, something else was happening. Throughout the fleet, Vorthak officers were talking, questioning. For the first time in generations, military personnel were discussing whether their orders were just, rather than simply obeying them. Captain Lisa Chen's voice suddenly echoed through the arena, transmitted from Earth. "Zara, can you hear me? We're showing massive energy signatures from your location. Are you safe?" The simple concern in Chen's voice, broadcast to hundreds of Vorthak warriors, carried more impact than any weapon could have achieved. Here was proof of what Zara had been describing: beings who cared for each other not out of duty or strategy, but from genuine affection. Admiral Thane studied the tactical displays for a long moment, then made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "Fleet Command, stand down from assault positions. Begin damage assessment and repair protocols." He turned to Zara, his expression no longer showing contempt but something approaching curiosity. "Perhaps it is time the Vorthak Empire learned something new. If these humans are truly as remarkable as you claim, then we should study them rather than destroy them. As news of the stand-down spread to Earth, celebrations erupted across the planet. Humanity had faced extinction and survived, not through superior firepower, but through the simple power of compassion and the courage to stand for their values. Zara looked out through the arena's observation windows at both fleets. The mighty, Vorthak vessels and the small battered ships that had somehow held them at bay. Two civilizations hung in space, each with something to teach the other. The galaxy was about to change, and it would begin with the simple recognition that strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when destruction was unnecessary. In choosing mercy, humanity had won something far more valuable than a military victory. They had won the future,